Having an understanding or intuition of apparent wind can greatly demystify the shuv-it and eliminate many hours of frustration. The induced wind vector is simply the speed of the windsurfer pointing in the opposite direction that the windsurfer is traveling. True wind is the wind that you feel when you are completely at rest. Apparent wind is the sum of the true wind and induced wind vectors. The wind you feel when you are planing is this combination of true wind and induced wind. When sailing slower, the induced wind will be smaller, and so the apparent wind will shift more to the true wind. When sailing faster, the induced wind will be larger, and so the apparent wind will shift more to the induced wind. When pointing more upwind, the apparent wind will be more similar to the true wind. You may notice a connection between the sail's angle and the apparent wind. Generally, when you are going slower, you are sheeted out, and when you are going faster, you are sheeted in. When you are going more upwind, you are more sheeted in, and when you are going downwind, you are more sheeted out. The key takeaway from this for the shuv-it is that the faster you are going, and the more upwind you are going, the more sheeted in you are, and the less you will have to be sheeted out for the sail to become neutral. At this point, don't worry if you don't know what that means, or how to get the sail neutral. Just spend a few minutes becoming comfortable with these apparent wind concepts. Baby steps help you gradually gain the muscle memory, intuition, and timing for the move with the least frustration. Exercise 1 is about learning to find the apparent wind angle, getting the sail neutral, and getting the sail backwinded. Sail along a beam reach at a moderate planing pace in the straps. Unhook, sheet out until you feel no pressure in the sail. Tilt the mast upwind towards or past the upwind rail, then push hard with both hands, but especially the clue hand, until you hear a pop in the sail and feel the wind push you straight back and stop your forward momentum. Imagine you are pushing a car uphill. Bend your knees and use your legs if you need to help with balance. If nothing happens, try getting the mast tilted more upwind, or pushing harder, or pushing the clue even farther away from you. If you get pulled downwind, then tilt the mast more upwind. If you get pushed off the upwind rail, tilt the mast less upwind. Do this 10 or 20 times until you quickly and smoothly pass the sail from normal sailing through neutral to backwinding. Try doing this at different points of sail and speeds to see how the change in apparent wind affects the exercise. Exercise 2 adds board movement to Exercise 1. Go faster, then carve the board upwind with your feet and at the same time sheet out to neutral. Tilt the mast into the wind and push to backwind the sail, just like Exercise 1. Do this until you can comfortably and quickly come to a complete stop from the push on the sail while in the straps and while balanced. As you get more comfortable, try and make the carve sharper and all movements happen faster. Imagine that you are trying to do a kind of hockey stop, but using the wind and sail as a parachute instead of the blades of ice skates. Instead of turning your skates, you are turning the sail. Instead of edging against the ice, you are pushing to oppose the apparent wind. If you are losing your balance, try to anticipate and lean against the direction that you are falling before you get to the point where you are finding you are losing your balance. If you are still having trouble, try carving the board less and simply build off Exercise 1 more slowly. When you carve the board, keep the mast upright and then angled upwind. Do not angle the mast downwind. Exercise 3 increases the speed and also times pushing the sail at the top of a piece of chop at that time. With this, you should feel the board rise up out of the water a little bit when you push the sail. Realize you are lifting the board without jumping. There was no compression, extension, pop, or jump from the legs in this exercise. Experiment by carving more or less into the wind and starting downwind or upwind before initiating. Pay attention to what happens to the lift, speed, and angles as you change these variables. Just like the other two exercises, do not point the mast downwind when you are carving. Keep it upright. You may have to hang off the sail or use your heels sharply to achieve the carve. It is okay to bend your knees and drop your weight down and off the upwind rail if you need to. Experiment with different ways of making the board turn upwind quickly and without losing too much power. Exercise 4 now introduces body weight movement in addition to sail and board movement. When you go to push the sail against the wind, lean your body towards the apparent wind and try to fall a little bit onto the sail. When the sail is pushed as you straighten your arms, it should also stop you from falling and prop you back up. If you do this with more speed and time it at the top of some chop, you will essentially be now doing a shove-it, even if the board doesn't really come out of the water at all or very much. Try to look upwind and make sure you are falling upwind and opening your hips at the same time. Do not leave the sail behind you. It should generally be between you and the apparent wind. Make sure the second to last thing you do is fall onto the sail. The very last thing is pushing back to right yourself again. You only fall onto the sail after you have already carved upwind, brought the sail to neutral, and angled the mast into the wind. If you fall on the sail before these things are done, you will not be able to get any lift from pushing on the sail. If the sail is behind you or the mast is pointing downwind, there will be no power in the sail when you push on it. There is no jumping with the legs. You are carving the board with your weight off of the upwind rail, getting your body weight towards the nose, and using your heels with your knees bent. As you pass the sail between you and the apparent wind, you are rolling from your heels to your toes, straightening your legs, and your body weight goes from the upwind rail toward the center line. This is really it for the shove-it. From here there are really no other big pieces involved in the move, only speed, sharpness, timing, and commitment. If something doesn't seem right, step back to the previous exercise and try again. Here are all the steps for the shove-it together. These should be familiar from the exercises you have learned. Sail on a beam reach, drop your weight down, off the upwind rail, knees bent, on your heels, weight more toward the board nose on your front leg, sail raked back and sheeted out, board is carving hard. As the board starts to turn, you open your hips and sheet the sail in. Angle the mast up towards the apparent wind. Allow the sail to pass in front of you between you and the apparent wind. And as this is happening, continue to open your hips and fall forward toward the apparent wind and onto the sail. Time it so that as you are falling onto the sail and into the apparent wind, you are at the top of some chop or wave. The sail is still sheeted in, and your hips are now open facing upwind. Your legs are straight, and the sail is now underneath you. Push the sail down toward the water with both arms. At the maximum height, sheet out slightly, and the nose of the board will steer back downwind, and you will land smoothly. By maintaining your body's momentum, you can maintain as much of the apparent wind strength and direction as possible. This is done by allowing the board to carve upwind while the body moves from one rail of the board towards the other. This transfer is conserving the center of mass of the sail, board, and body system. The second principle is to get the sail through neutral before backwinding by angling the mast upwind somewhat. Do not angle the mast downwind and attempt to backwind. It will not backwind. It will only act as an air brake and cancel any upwind motion. The third principle says that everything should work together, hips, board, sail, and body weight, to allow the board and sail to swing from downwind of the body to upwind of the body. The sail is between you and the apparent wind when you are falling on it. The board will be pointed to the apparent wind or upwind of it at the peak of the lift. Here is each transition in detail. If you are having trouble at any point in the move, review the transition detail here. The first transition from beam reach fast sailing to carving is to sheet out, drop your weight down and off the upwind rail. Move the body weight toward the nose on your front leg and bend your knees. Carve with your heels. Counterbalance the sail, raking back and sheeting out with your body weight going forward and off the upwind rail. Continue to open your hips. Now sheet in. Look upwind. Move your body weight toward the apparent wind and toward the center line, rolling onto your toes somewhat and starting to straighten your legs. Angle the mast into the wind. Do not leave the mast behind you. The sail needs to be between you and the apparent wind before you push on it, and this transition step is where it will start to happen. Continue to roll onto your toes and straighten your legs. Look and fall more into the apparent wind. The sail should continue to find its way between you and the apparent wind. Keep sheeted in and open the hips more. Continue to open the hips and fall onto the sail. You should be at or near the top of some chop at this point. No lift comes from jumping or extending the legs. The lift is from the backwind pressure on the sail and the speed the board takes up and over the chop. Now you should be completely over the sail, which should be between you and the apparent wind. This means that the center of effort is somewhere between you and the apparent wind. The mast should also be between you and the apparent wind. If the mast is downwind of you, this will not work. At this point, the sail is also between you and the water. Instead of pushing on the sail with the sail upright, as in exercise 1, you push down on the sail toward the water since you are on top of the sail. Use both arms and fully commit to falling on the sail. You should be in the air after this. To land, simply sheet out a little bit to steer the nose downwind. Keep your legs straight until you land. Compare the first step to the last. The center of effort of the sail and the center of mass of the board go from downwind of the sailor's body to upwind of the sailor's body at the peak of the lift. Consider how this looks like a pendulum swing and how the transfer preserves the center of mass of the sailboard body system. Consider, for example, if instead the sail were to be raked way downwind at the peak. The center of mass would not be maintained. If you are getting pushed onto your back or not being able to get on top of the sail, your weight may be too far back. Try to get on the front leg more while carving and fall forward into the apparent wind. If you are going over the handlebars into a Vulcan or cheese roll, or you are feeling no lift in the sail, then the sail is most likely not between you and the apparent wind. Probably you have tried to lay the sail down like a jibe rather than keep it upright, bringing it neutral and angling the mast upwind before falling onto it. Review the exercises and make sure that the mast leads the body and that the mast is upwind of the body before you fall onto the sail. If you are doing everything else right but not getting much height or lift, probably you are sheeting out too early or not sheeting in while falling on top of the sail. It is important to keep the sail neutral until you push on the sail. If the sail is sheeted out, then it will backwind too early and force the nose of the board to come back downwind. Try the exercises again to get a feel for the timing to keep the sail neutral for longer. If you are getting into the air and feeling some force, but not enough when you sheet out to steer you back downwind to land, then probably you have not steered into the wind enough. The slower you are going, then the more you need to turn upwind. Remember the apparent wind introduction. Going faster allows you to carve less and keep more of the speed to hit the ramp. You can also carve more if you want to hit a ramp at a different angle, and having more speed will help keep you moving. More speed also keeps the apparent wind angle more parallel to the board, which makes it easier to recover on the landing. Carving through a larger angle means the board will end up more into the true wind, possibly exposing too much of the sail to the wind. Carving too little will not expose the sail enough. Generally, carving faster will help keep the apparent wind more parallel to the board and make everything easier. If you carve slower, then you probably need to carve more into the true wind because your speed will fall off by the time you are ready to backwind. Body weight positioning is critical to a controlled smooth takeoff and landing. Too far back and you will have to aggressively compensate. Angling the sail more into the wind provides more backwind power. Angling the sail downwind more requires you to really scoop out the sail to land, and it only works if you have good height, speed, and control.